Hello and welcome to the Handplane Challenge. I'm Mark, your host and referee/umpire. Some planes deserve to have strikes called on them, and as the umpire I'm here to do that for you so that you don't have to find out the hard way yourself. Today's challenge, since we've been on Stanley hand planes in all the previous videos, today we're going to switch gears and go to Miller's Falls. The challenge is between a Miller's Falls number 9 and a Miller's Falls number 709. Miller's Falls is an old company, started in 1868. Interestingly, they made a lot of good tools, but they didn't actually start making hand planes until 1929. Just in time for the Great Depression. Not very good timing, I would say. The Miller's Falls number 9 is their good quality hand plane. It was targeted to professional carpenters and woodworkers. It pretty much competes head-to-head with the Stanley Bailey number 4. In 1950, Miller's Falls introduced a line of premium hand planes. These are now known as the Buck Rogers planes because of the advanced features and modern styling. A number 9 in 1949 sold for around $7. In 1950, when they were introduced, a 709 sold for $9. A $2 increase, roughly 30%, which doesn't seem like a lot today, but probably was a bigger deal back in 1950. Finally, I would say that I don't know what was in the minds of the Miller's Falls executives, but this seems a little bit like a copycat move because it's very similar to what other plane manufacturers were doing, reminiscent in particular of a Stanley Bailey versus Stanley Bedrock marketing strategy. Okay, let's get right to it and see what makes these planes tick. Okay, let's meet our first contestant. This is the Miller's Falls number 9. This plane is just like a Stanley number 4 in most respects, with one exception that we'll get to in just a moment. You can see Miller's Falls on the lever cap. There's a patent number here, 1822520, which I think is, I'm pretty sure, is due to the flexible lever cap. More about that later. In the side of the plane, Miller's Falls number 9 stamped into the bed. It has a genuine Miller's Falls cutter, made in the USA. And for those woodworkers who have trouble measuring things, they even helpfully put in 2 inches below the Made in USA. Okay, we're going to take this thing apart now. Lever cap, cutter assembly, just like a typical Stanley cutter assembly. Frog, again, practically identical to a Bailey. I think the idea here is that pretty much most of Stanley's patents had expired by 1929, so they were free to copy at will. So let's take the frog off. So we can see underneath it.
This one is newer than my Stanley Bailey number 4. So we've got things like, okay, the knob here in the front is more like a tall knob. It's got the large size depth adjustment knob, lateral adjuster. You can tell a lot of times, you can tell what manufacturers made a plane. Like say in this case it's practically identical to a Stanley, but almost every manufacturer used a slightly different lateral adjustment lever. In this case you've got one bend to the side, whereas in the Stanley case you've got a tab in the middle. Sergeants are a little different. Everybody had a little bit different end to the lateral adjustment lever. So there you can see most of the important features. The bed seating is like I said, just practically identical to a Stanley. Frog adjustment screw here, again practically identical. So we're not going to go through any more blow-by-blows on this plane. We've already done 2 videos on the Stanley Bailey number 4, and everything about this is going to be just about the same as in those videos, with one important exception, which I hope we can pick up on video adequately. And that is, the one unique feature of this plane is the flexible lever cap. You can see that the lever cap is in 2 pieces here. There's a couple of little protrusions down here. It swivels. There's a retaining pin right here. And when I first saw this, I was, a little puzzled by it. I didn't think it didn't really seem obvious to me that it had any real advantage. And then I ran across a really useful reference, which I'll put in the notes to this video. Here's what happens with the Miller's Falls flexible lever cap. Watch right here as I close. You can see, I hope, that when I lock the lever cap, these tabs here are really pushing down and forcing the cutter against the frog. I was fairly amazed when I saw this. It is pushed so tight that you can't get a feeler gauge in there. It is seated as tight as it's possible to be. Now, let's look at the Stanley for comparison. Here's the Stanley. You can see now that this one still, the lever cap is still locked. I mean, this thing is like, it's got a humongous gap in there. Unlocked. The lever cap is going to be pushing down. Here's the attachment point in the middle. It'll be pushing down on this end and on this end. So here I go, pushing down. It really doesn't do anything here in the middle, and that arch is just still there and still big. That cutter is just not flat against that frog. And actually, I thought this, the Stanley number 4 was my user plane and works very well, but this is a really big difference. Let's go through that one more time with the Miller's Falls. Maybe try a little different camera angle. We're up. Now It's not locked down. So there's a gap here. You can even stick the feeler gauge in here. Now, pushing down on the locking mechanism. Voila, everything is squished flat against the cutters, and the chip breaker are squished flat against the frog and are very, very solid. I had totally not understood how that worked prior to this, and I have to say that seems like one bodaciously fine improvement that they made. We'll see if that shows up better in the shaving comparison. Okay, let's meet our second contestant. This is the Miller's Falls number 709, also known as the Buck Rogers plane. Just a quick tour. We're going to have to move right along because there's a lot to see on this plane. Miller's Falls on the lever cap. Miller's Falls number 709 stamped into the body of the plane. Patent pending. We've got plastic handle, plastic tote, and plastic knob. When I first got this plane, this area right here was covered in a layer of black corrosion. And I also have this plane's older brother, the 714, which I accidentally left sitting on a piece of paper one day, and about a month later I came back and there were pinholes all over the bed of the plane. So I am concerned about the gray cast iron, how it may be more susceptible to corrosion than the cast iron used in the Stanley planes, or even in the Miller's Falls number 9. That's conjecture, but I have experience with an unfortunate incident, so take it for what you will. Alright, let's go ahead and take it apart. Lever cap. Lever cap has the flexible lever cap feature that the number 9 had. Also, I didn't even know this until recently, the lever cap locking mechanism has a little roller right here, so that when you lock it down, that roller rolls against the spring instead of rubbing against it like most other planes. Cutter assembly. Custom cutter shape here, which is a requirement for this plane, because if you try to put a different cutter on there, anything going up higher will run into the lateral adjustment lever right here. Unlike the other kinds of planes, this one sticks up in an upward direction, and so you're not allowed to put a longer cutter in it. It would actually probably also just barely run into the tote there, so basically you're stuck with a 709 cutter if you ever need to replace one. Next, here's the frog. The frog in these is made of aluminum, and the blade, I guess these are cast surfaces instead of ground as in the cast iron frogs of other planes. I don't have an opinion about whether that's better or worse. We're going to go ahead and take this out. Phillips head screws. There's a novelty for a hand plane. Now we take out these two screws, but that's not all. We also have to take off the handle, which we do by taking out these two screws. There's one. There's the other. Push out the screw from the other side. Now, the handle has to slide up and up and up until it gets to the top, and then it rotates out. And that reveals, get our stuff out of the way here, that reveals the last screw, and frog comes off. That's what it looks from the top again. You can tell it's aluminum, it's very lightweight. You can get to the depth adjustment knob down here. I've not ever had it apart, but I presume if you take out this screw and rotate the depth adjustment knob, you would probably be able to remove this, the nut. However, to get the yoke out, you're going to have to take this pin out. Depth adjustment knob is a large size. It's probably good for making sensitive movements. And there's the bed of the plane. It's nice for having the lateral adjustment close to the handle. The mouth adjustment requires loosening all three screws. You can go from, this is all the way back, and that's all the way forward. It doesn't seem, I guess you would be able to, there's sort of a limited range here. But I guess you could have it this far forward. The frog isn't going to fit on here. You can see it's going to mismatch with the bed somewhat, but I presume there's no reason not to do that. Okay. Now we're going to put it back together and take it for a test drive. Okay, first up, Miller's Falls number 9. Off to the side. There we go. That was good. Full width. Didn't hold together very well, but made it the whole length of the board and made a nice thin shaving. I think that's good. Next up, Buck Rogers 709. Let's see how it goes. Nice wide shaving on this one. I worked on the chip breaker quite a bit yesterday, so we may need to do a little bit more on the number 9 of the same type. Nice and thin. I don't know, I could maybe make that a little thinner. We'll give it a quick try here. I don't think it'll get too much thinner than that. Yep, that is performing very well. Both of these are making good shavings. Alrighty then. Okay, now it's time for the wrap up. The Miller's Falls number 9 is a solid, well-built plane. Now that I understand the flexible lever cap better, I'm excited about using it in the future, and I think it has an excellent chance of moving to the top of my user list. The Miller's Falls 709 is a beautiful plane. However, it has some potential strikes. It's got the custom blade. The availability of these blades is probably pretty limited, and you won't be able to put anything in there because it'll run into the lateral adjustment lever. So it has to pretty much be a Buck Rogers blade. Secondly, the mouth opening is more limited and harder to change than in other planes, including the number 9. Thirdly, I think the metallurgy is a little more suspect than most planes. The gray cast iron seems more prone to corrosion in my experience. This is not an insurmountable obstacle, but it means that you'll probably have to work harder to keep it looking like new, especially if you live in a climate such as this of extreme high humidity. So in conclusion, it seems to me that the obvious winner is the tried and true workhorse, the Miller's Falls number 9. Thank you, and stay tuned for future episodes.